Thank you so much. Yes, I'm a little bit biased, but I love what we're doing. And I love, too, the way we weave in and out of a lot of what we've heard already from speakers this morning. So my name is Justin Berger. I'm with FirstBuild. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of GE Appliances, which was just this summer acquired by a Hire. So we are now FirstBuild, a wholly owned subsidiary of GE Appliances, a Hire company. So I've got fold-out business cards that I can give out if anybody's got any questions. But today I want to talk about why FirstBuild, so why a big company like GE Appliances is looking at what is essentially a product incubator within the big company that's kind of been walled off as a startup. I'll talk a little bit about our model of design, build, and sell. And what we're trying to do here is we've heard a little bit about open innovation today. We're trying to weave together open innovation through the design side with rapid and advanced manufacturing and small-scale production on the build side into experimental sales and models as we go to market. I'll show a little bit of a case study looking at our Opal nugget ice machine, and then want to give a little bit of a teaser about a new collaboration system we're developing that we're internally calling Giddy. So why FirstBuild? What we see is when you're really good at mass production, innovation seems to have massive risks. So at GE, when we're thinking about a new product, we're thinking in terms of 1 million of something. And if you make 1 million of a bad something, you made a big mistake. And that's a mistake that nobody wants to make. So right now we're forcing difficult decisions on our employees by immediately making the scale so large. So there are a few barriers that we see when we go in. One is confidentiality. So our headquarters looks a lot like a traditional R&D headquarters. We've got a giant fence around the outside. You only get in with a badge. And it makes it a little bit difficult to talk openly when I've got to bring somebody into that environment. Production costs, so we're optimizing for 1 million of something, which means we spend a ton of money on equipment and capital, and we're making that investment because we know it'll pay off over 1 million of something. But if that 1 million is a bad thing, then we wasted that huge investment costs. And we've also got an internal selection bias that happens. So if you think about who the decision makers are in your company, I think we naturally tend to skew toward upper management's opinion, and we're looking at how do we really focus on the opinions of customers and drive that into the product as much as possible. So when you factor in the uncertainty, the high costs, all the risks involved, that's why it typically takes us years to get to market. And that's years after we've made a decision to go to market, which typically takes a few years on top of that. What we're trying to do at FirstBuild is really look at low volume. How do we get to market as fast as possible, get product in consumers' hands in low volume. And as we scale up, we really only want to make up to 1,000 of something. And by the time we've made 1,000, we should either know we've got a great product that we're going to scale up to GE, or maybe we've got a product that's not quite ready for market, that isn't the right product to go to market with, and we're going to quietly retire that without spending as much money. If we've got a good one, we want to scale it as quick as possible, and luckily we've already been in the market and know how to get there. So I'm going to read the mission verbatim to make sure I drive this across. But what we want to do is invent a new world of home appliances by creating a socially engaged community of home enthusiasts, designers, engineers, and makers that will share ideas, try them out, and build real products to improve your life. So what I really want to hit on here is just that openness with a community of enthusiasts who love our products, who have strong opinions. And it's absolutely critical that we build them. Building a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings, is what we like to say. And we could talk about things for ages, and we could have a hackathon over a weekend and actually build these concepts and get some feedback out of them. So this is just a snapshot. It's a little bit dated, being a couple years old, but a snapshot of the collaborative economy, which is probably an eye chart for most of you. But what I want to point out on here is we've already heard a lot about Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, crowdfunding engines like Indiegogo. What they're doing is finding new ways of connecting people that are entirely disrupting industries. And as GE Appliances, we're afraid that somebody could come along with a new model, connect some of our customers, and completely obsolete a business that's been around for more than 100 years. How we've done that, we've got an online community. So if you go to firstbuild.com, you can submit ideas if you've got things that you think we should work on. We actually pay royalties to any of the idea submitters who help develop a product that goes to market. They earn a royalty on everything we make as FirstBuild or GE Appliances. You can see the projects that we're working on. So I'll openly show you the status of any of our projects that are in the pipeline right now. We've got the ability to host design challenges. So when we come across a specific problem that we're looking to solve, we can offer a cash or a prize bounty to help find folks that can help us solve that. And then people can put their own projects on here that aren't necessarily related to home appliances, and actually use the community and those networking effects to help them along the path. In addition to the online community, we've got a physical workshop in Louisville, Kentucky. It's very much like a traditional R&D facility in that I've got everything I need to make the first 1 or 2 prototypes of an appliance, and I can actually do low volume manufacturing out of this facility. Where it differs a little bit is this is actually open to the public, so anybody can come in and see exactly what we're working on. They can use any of the tools available in our workshop to work on home furniture, whatever they're interested in. And that's including 3D printers, laser cutters, on up to our water jet CNC equipment. We're entirely open to the public, and that helps drive the great opinions of people who are hands-on and creative into the products that we're working on, which is a big reason of why we take on that burden of actually supporting and opening ourselves up. And I encourage you, if you're ever in Louisville, please do come visit us. We'd love to have you in our facility and let you see a little bit of what we do. What we're really looking to do here is shift to a making mindset in our R&D. And I want to stress that a lot of these core principles of being very linear, focusing on production and protecting our intellectual property are absolutely critical for a mass production company. But for R&D, we can't always think like a mass production company, and doing so can hinder us. So that's where we're looking at how do we constantly iterate, get products out faster and drive feedback into the products. How do we prototype as fast as possible, use new technologies, and then where can open innovation really benefit us, and being strategic about when are we walled off with a patent that needs to be kept secret, and when can we be open and talk about what a product should look like. And I think there's a really strong differentiation that a lot of times a great product idea has no intellectual property behind it. The intellectual property might be the technical engine that makes that idea work, but the broad idea has no intellectual property behind it. So I wanted to dive in and show you a little bit about design, build, and sell and how that works for us. We like to call the design side co-creation, but it's all about open innovation. And how do we take as much feedback as possible, be very transparent about what we're doing. Building, we use a lot of rapid manufacturing, rapid prototyping, and then we look at low volume. And then the absolute critical part of our model is we actually sell what we make as an R&D company. There's no better consumer feedback or insights you can get than getting you to give me money to give you a product. I know I've got a product if somebody's willing to buy it from me. And then having the sell loop connected back to design, so I can take that feedback of it's not selling. The person who got the first prototype in their house doesn't love the product or thinks it could be improved in this way, or absolutely loves it and wants it available in another color as fast as possible. So when we look at design, we're very strategic about what we take on as FirstBuild. We want something entirely game-changing and innovative. So if we've got an energy standard that's coming in from the government, that's probably not something we're going to look at FirstBuild. We've got a hard deadline on that. We've got technical experts who can help us meet that at GE. What we want to look at is that new feature that's been out there that everybody's been thinking about that we're not really sure how to approach and we need to do some research around. We also like to manage our risk, so we'll never put a product in the hands of a consumer that's not entirely safe. And for that reason, there are products that we won't touch at FirstBuild because it's difficult to do the safety testing. I've got a funnel up there on the right side that shows how our ideas progress to a product. Right now we've got over 1,300 ideas that have come in on the platform from GE employees, from the general public, from our suppliers, from our customers. We've got 15 active projects right now, and those are projects that I'm working on with the community, which are non-employees. We do that primarily through working with universities on senior capstone projects for their design or engineering students, where we mentor them along, we give them the scope of a project. We actually work with them to get a proof of concept of a product. Our team of about 20 engineers, commercial folks, and fabricators are all we've got to make these products that we're working on. So we focus on about 7 at a time is the most that team of 20 can handle. And since our inception of July of 2014, we've come up with 16 products. Our goal for next year is 12 products. So I've got 20 people launching a product every single month, which is a pretty fast cycle, but that's absolutely critical to the creativity. We've got a few different paths we'll take. So we'll add features to existing products. The picture there is dual oven ranges are very popular in the US. So it's got an upper cavity that's a little bit smaller and a lower one. So for holidays, they can cook 2 separate dishes, or you can just cook in the smaller cavity. People hate reaching into that small cavity if they want to stir because it's a little bit shorter. So what we came up with was a drawer that actually slides out and it brings that food out to you. Has huge applications for accessibility when you're teaching kids to cook, for folks with disabilities, but just general convenience for anyone. We'll also look at technology transfer. So when I'm selling an appliance online, traditionally what GE does is big installed appliances like your refrigerator, your stove. You're not as likely to buy those online. But if we can look at the countertop market and how we could do, for an example, that's an induction cooktop that pairs with a wireless Bluetooth temperature sensor. So now you're cooking to an exact temperature instead of high, medium, or low, which is different on every single burner depending on what's in the pot. It's the right way to cook. But now we're able to look at how do we transfer that technology from a countertop product that I could sell online to a built-in product that GE makes. We'll do some repackaging and customization. So can we offer custom colors or appearances and actually market an existing product under a different product line with a new color to find a new market, which is extremely difficult for our mass production factories to handle. And then we'll even do ground up things. So that's a picture of our pizza oven that we're building, brand new proposition. It's entirely electric, ventless, all the power of a wood-fired oven that you can actually have in your house that's pretty easy to maintain and control. On the build side, we lie somewhere between a model shop and a high-volume mass production shop, and we like to call it hacking. We mean hacking in the most endearing of senses, in that we want to change the way, take what we've got and change the way that we do it. So we've got a few different models. One is our bottoms up. So the pizza oven, we're literally building 95% of that in our small facility, and then we use the other 5% as off-the-shelf components from existing suppliers that we can drop in. We'll collaborate with the GE plants. So on that double cavity range, we actually get a full oven in from one of our existing plants and then retrofit it with the slide out drawer. And then I'll talk a little bit about crowdfunding when we get to selling. But the interesting thing about crowdfunding is what it's driven us to do for scale. So I mentioned I only want to make up to 1,000 of something at FirstBuild. In the case of our crowdfunding campaigns, we're selling more than 6,000 units of a product before we've actually made the first one, which entirely breaks my micro production process. But we've looked at where we can work with a mass production partner, where we own the design and work with them to bring that product to fruition. So this is some of the low volume capability that we've got in-house as far as plastics, metals, finishing, controls, hardware, and then actually assembling the product. And then we also work with our headquarters for some of the niche manufacturing processes where the equipment might be a little more costly to install and we won't use it as frequently. Then we want to work with we call it the mothership, but how do we go back and utilize the capabilities that don't make sense for us to build in-house? On the sell side, what I really like to do is start out, and I've got to credit Jeffrey Moore here with crossing the chasm, but this is the typical adoption curve of a product. So you've got your early adopters who want the first one or two of something. They're the ones who are waiting in line for that iPhone. And once people get more familiar with it, the technology evolves, the mass adoption takes on, you get more of a large market appeal. And then toward the end are the laggards. So these would be the folks that are still holding out on a smartphone yet. They're not sure if it's going to catch on or not. They exist. But the hard part here is when I want to focus on mass production and 1 million of something, what I'm really doing is targeting the majority market. But unfortunately, if there's nothing out there for the early adopters yet, it's hard to get the majority to take on. So what FirstBuild really does is allow us to engage those early adopters, get products in their hands as fast as possible, and then use the mass production engine of GE to get that product when the market's right to as many people as possible. And there are a few different ways in that we go to market. So what we like to do as much as possible is direct sales. So firstbuild.com, you can see the products that we've got for offer. And then out of our headquarters, we actually retail, so anybody can come into our space and buy. We work with a lot with strategic channel would be our traditional retailers. So we're probably not going to work with a nationwide retailer because we can't support that volume. They'd want more than 1,000 of something. But we might pick 4 or 5 independents and run market studies where we actually offer a product just to them that they can put for sale. The beauty of that is we're selling with a full GE suite of appliances and we're selling against customers. So I can do all kinds of pricing research. I can understand my feature sets and what's driving decisions when I work with an existing retailer and sell on that traditional sales floor. And one of the paths that's really exciting that I'll drive into with the case study are our test and learn phase. So how do we go to market in new ways? And crowdfunding is the biggest one that's been very interesting for us to learn from. We've had a few successes as well as a few less than successes. And that brings me to our Opal Nugget Ice Maker. So we love ice in general in the US. What nugget ice is, it's small, crunchy pellets of ice. So if you're familiar with Sonic restaurants in the US, they have nugget ice. It's going to be very popular in cocktails. What it actually is compacted frost into a tiny nugget. You store it above freezing, so it's actually constantly melting. And what we want to look at is how can we get this into a refrigerator. The challenge of putting into a refrigerator is I'm taking my ice maker from the freezer to the fresh compartment, and now I've got melt water that I need to figure out what to do with because we don't have drains for refrigerators yet. So I'll walk you through a little bit of the process, but the idea came in, it was actually from an engineer at GE who's been working on this for probably 10 years now, trying to figure out where does nugget ice go, how do I get into a refrigerator, and nobody's willing to take that bet right now because it's a costly change to make. We actually held a design challenge online, so we decided rather than putting it into a refrigerator, which would be difficult for us, could we make a countertop version that could just get this product out in the hands of people, understand if they want nugget ice at home. We actually took this through crowdfunding through Indiegogo. We set a $150,000 target for raising. So if we didn't reach that $150,000, we weren't going to make the product. We'd walk away from it. And what we figured was that was enough to make it worth our tooling and effort to go forward with the product. And then you can see the product on the right there. We did hold a design challenge, and that's the winning design. And you can see basically we put some rough parameters around it as far as what kind of space we needed, what the key features were, and we asked our community to come up with what the look was. That's the winning design based out of Guadalajara, Mexico. So here's a little bit about how nugget ice is made, and I'll start at the bottom where you've got a reservoir of water. It sits in a cylinder that's kept below freezing, and what that does is then you get snow that forms around the outside of the cylinder. We've got an auger that then spins and collects all that frost or snow. It forms it into little tubes of compacted frost, so it's kind of like a snowball tube. And then there's a little spinner at the top that you can see there that's breaking off the little individual nuggets into roundish shapes. Super crunchy, great in cocktails, people love it. But what's interesting, so this is showing some of our crowdfunding data. So I mentioned we wanted to raise $150,000 over our 30-day campaign. What you can see here is on day one alone, we raised almost $500,000. By the time the campaign closed in 30 days, we were at $2.7 million. So that's money that I, as an R&D engine, just made money, and I made it 12 months before I'm going to deliver a product. So this was game-changing for us. And when you look at crowdfunding, a company like GE isn't one you would anticipate to crowdfund, because traditionally crowdfunding was to raise capital. And what we're looking at it as, crowdfunding doesn't have to just be the way to raise capital for a project. It can be a great way to validate a product. So if I at FirstBuild spend 12 months developing the wrong product and you don't want it, that's a loss for us as a society. If I could use your feedback and make sure I'm developing the right product, crowdfunding becomes a great engine for us as to how to make winning products. The other interesting thing as we look at that chart on the left is typically with crowdfunding, you see a huge spike on day one, and that's because I need to basically know that I've got enough sales in my pocket. I've got all this prearranged just to get enough press that the campaign is successful, and then it typically dies off pretty quickly. The fact that we've got some subsequent peaks and spikes shows a lot of the power of our Facebook ad campaign. So as we understood who our customers were, you can actually put their email addresses into Facebook. It'll help you market to people who are similar to the folks who have already bought, and that shows some of the success we were able to get through our Facebook marketing campaigns. The chart on the right shows some demographic information, and this is basically a heat map of sales in the US, which is the only place we made it available to start out. But the orangish color there are the most number of sales, yellow is moderate, green is low. But what you can see here is basically the US southeast corner is where most of our sales came from. So we knew exactly where to target market our customers throughout the crowdfunding campaign. And now when, as GE, we make a refrigerator, I know exactly where most of my customers are, where I need to stock, where I want to do most of my marketing. And these are some familiar names up here. But Opal ended up over 6,000 orders, 2.7 million over the course of the 30-day campaign. We've raised over we've sold over 1 million pre-orders since then, and actually just started shipping the product last month, which is really exciting to get into folks' hands and hear their feedback on it. But that puts us in the top 10 of Indiegogo's crowdfunding campaigns overall, and along good company of Nebbia. You might recognize some names from Apple there with Y Combinator, hoping that happened, and then Oculus was just mentioned being acquired by Facebook. These are some pictures of, I like just showing the process of developing Opal, and you can see some of the capability we've got as far as woodworking for prototypes, metalworking, controls, and this is how that product really came together. And actually at the time of the crowdfunding campaign, this was all we had, was a rough kind of Terminator looking nugget ice maker. And then we had a beautiful rendering from our industrial design team of what the product was going to look like. And that's really all we needed to develop before we went to market with that campaign and raised close to $3 million. So what we're working on next, we love what we're doing as far as coming up with new innovative products, coming up with new innovative ways of going to market. What we want to work on next is how do we engage our community and really push the limits of open innovation. So the platform we're working on is Giddy, and hopefully early next year you'll start seeing a little bit more about Giddy. But it'll be a little bit more open, so not as narrowly focused on appliances, and that we want to engage everyone, have a few more open projects. And what we really want to do is assess the skills of the folks that are coming in and contributing, and then custom serve them content that's going to appeal to them, ways that they can get more engaged in everything that we're doing.